one of the things that, and we can relate this to what Sirach brought up in the previous installment just a few minutes ago, connecting it to slavery. And if you connect the two and play out the two stories, the slaver, the hunter, said to Cisco, "We'll make sure we don't come into your space anymore.
Right.
We won't come here.
Right.
So we won't bother you."
Right.
And then the answer is like, it's not about that. It's about this is wrong. And
you know what that might have been real quick? That's a subtle boycott. Fine, then we won't do business with your country if that's how you're going to be.
Yeah. Or, imagine, one state to the next. Oh, I'm sorry. We'll make sure you don't see this kind of stuff anymore. And is that what it is? Oh, good. So now I don't have to see it. Obviously, I don't think Cisco thinks like that. I don't have to see it. But at the same time, you can't go, well, we're going to go and take our army and go all the way over across into the Gamma Quadrant, find you and change your whole world and change your whole world of thinking. Right. So it's an interesting problem. How do you, and we see it in our own world. How do we help? Or if we see something that's wrong in another country that's morally reprehensible, abhorrent. Did I say that right? But we can't just necessarily go into every country and change all the morals and stuff that we see, that the immorality that we see, right? So it's an interesting problem, and you still see it here on Star Trek. And the Prime Directive is supposed to be that guide, yet is oftentimes in conflict with what really is the right thing to do. So how does a Starfleet officer navigate through that? And I'm sure we'll see that for the next 6 seasons, as well as people have seen it on TNG, or we've watched on Discovery with the different leaders. How do you, and is there ever really a punishment for breaking the Prime Directive? I feel like it probably happens all the time. Oh, you broke the Prime Directive again. And I'm going to finish with this thought. If you think of it in a philosophical way, breaking the Prime Directive could be fate's way of taking the course wherever that species or wherever that civilization needed to go anyway. So why is it that we think, or in Starfleet, breaking the Prime Directive is so wrong? Because maybe that action, whatever it might have been, towards that civilization is what truly needed to happen or not needed to happen, whether it's the demise or the progression of that civilization. It just is. Except in the sense, you know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
It does, but not to foreshadow what's going to happen, but it's interesting what you said. You said, what happens when you leave it alone and you walk away from it? And what's interesting to me is that this character is basically the prequel to the Jem'Hadar. He looks like a Jem'Hadar, as a matter of fact. Right?
They're connected. They're connected.
They're connected in some kind of way. They have the same kind of features. What's interesting is that the Jem'Hadar are also a genetically kind of created race.
That's right, they are.
That is designed to execute in a certain way, one function, right? Mm-hmm. And so that is the answer. We have to deal with the likes of the Jem'Hadar if we let these kinds of things go unchecked by following the Prime Directive. Do you see what I mean?
Absolutely. But what would have happened if, what would it look like, or what would have been the result of absolutely breaking the Prime Directive and stopping, or trying, I should say, going to stop this from happening? Would have led to war, right? So before we even got to the Dominion War. So is that the right choice also? So that's what's such an interesting conversation. The choices we make have results, positive and negative. The Prime Directive prevents people from making choices based on what the idea is that we can't interfere. But isn't that interference part of the progression, or wherever that action takes towards that civilization or that species just part of the timeline anyway. You see what I'm saying? Like, we see something happening across the street. Somebody's doing something that's dangerous or we don't like. We can choose to either engage, or we could say, nope, we just got to let it run its course. We're not here to jump in. We're here to observe and whatever that might be. If one chooses to engage, then that's going to have repercussions, positive and or negative. One might actually save or have a positive result where the perpetrating person that is doing the negative is taken away. The one is saved. If we do nothing, then maybe the other one ends up in the hospital or dead or something stolen, looking in a crime situation. Yeah. If you get involved, you might end up with a negative result, or it could be positive, right? It's just, I guess I'm just thinking totally philosophical, and there's no answer to the question. Where do you break the prime directive? Where do you not? It's just an interesting conflict. It's a very interesting conflict to me.
Where do you engage and where do you make it so?
And I think that is what our leadership, those are the choices our leaders and leadership in general faces all the time. The lines to cross, how far to cross them, and, where they should be drawn. So I think it's just, like I said, it adds a layer of depth to Sisko's character in the thought process that he goes through to have to face these challenges and these decision making. You talk about two people across the street getting into it and getting involved. If that is the case, let's say you go there to break up a fight, you could break up the fight and let the two people walk their separate ways, and that's true. That's a far enough, perhaps. Or you can engage in taking one person who you think is the violent one and take them out completely, and now start to be violent towards them.
And what if you were wrong? What if you misunderstood who? Exactly. Right. Yeah.
Right. So that what
they did in this episode.
So those are the questions.
Yeah. So what really? Oh, go ahead, Ryan. Sorry.
I was just going to say they thought that they were doing the moral play and saving this guy, but what they didn't realize is the guy didn't want to be saved.
Right.
The other guys didn't want him to be saved. Nobody the Federation kind of stuck its nose in somebody else's business, when in this case, it wasn't actually a good thing. But I'll tell you where the Prime Directive kind of comes from to better understand it. And they covered it pretty well in an episode called First Contact, one of my favorite ones on The Next Generation. There's also an episode called that. It was written by Mark Scott Zickrey, who also wrote Beyond the Stars. So that's a couple good ones he's written there. Mm-hmm. But what it is Riker is a Malkorian, and what he is he's learning about this new race called the Malkorians by pretending to be one of them and observing and whatever, right? Because that's what they do. They want to observe these races without getting in the way, of the natural flow and the natural evolution. And I believe B.B. Newirth is one of the leads in that episode. What happens is he gets injured some way. So the doctors start looking at him and they realize he has different organs. And so they find out this guy is not a Malkorian. So now they're faced with, do we let the world know, holy crap, there are other alien species out in the world, before they're ready to say that? They don't have warp speed. They don't know that aliens exist at all. And now the government is like, the scientist lady, B.B. Newirth, is saying, wait, if our society finds out that there are aliens among us, there's going to be bedlam. There's going to be anarchy. People are going to be freaking out. We have religious societies. They're not going to know what's going to happen. They're going to go ballistic. So they figure we should continue to keep it a secret, not break the Prime Directive, because our society is not ready for this yet. We don't want anarchy. We don't want riots in the streets. We don't want our entire civilization to break down. It's just like if aliens came down and landed in the 1900s, 1950, right here on the White House lawn or whatever, people would go berserk. They wouldn't know. People would freak out. Some people would praise them like they're gods. Other people would try to kill them, So anyway, that's kind of where it comes from.
But
I like that.
But at the same time, no one's going to wake up one day and go, okay, we're ready. Let the aliens come on down. We are ready. We've all figured everything out.
That's why they say warp speed is the barometer, because once they develop warp speed, they're going to find out about aliens anyway. So now we're no longer stepping in the natural flow and development of things, because they're already going to find out about aliens. So we might as well go and say, hey, how's it going? There's aliens. You're about to find out anyway.
But again, that's a judgment on when one might be ready to receive something based because, oh, well, they've got this. And
Well,
that doesn't necessarily mean just because the technology arrived that now we are socially and psychologically ready to accept aliens into the world, and that all of a sudden we're not going to riot. We're not going to call them gods. The same things would probably still happen.
Correct. The same thing might still happen, but at least we wouldn't cause it, because they're already going to go find out that there are aliens now on their own. So if that happens, it happens because that was their natural evolution, not because we stepped.
But again, that's an assumption. They could get warp speed, fly, and never meet aliens for generations. They just are, can't navigate.
Well, they will, because then the bad guy races, the Romulans or the Klingons or the Cardassians might jump in. So the Federation says, well, we need to get to them and introduce them to everything before they run into a bad race, which is, again, to what you're saying, a judgment call.
But maybe if they met the aliens sooner, they would have gotten the warp speed sooner. And that might have been able to help other things within the population. I guess what I'm trying to say is there's neither one is right or wrong, and is my point. It's just, as
it's a judgment call.
It's decision. It's Cisco's decision making. If Cisco said no, get off, and just started firing at the hunting, instead of threatening it, and just fired at them and completely blew up, their ship, that would have been a whole nother episode. Instead, they found a way to kind of make themselves feel somewhat okay by helping Tosk and not necessarily breaking the Prime Directive completely in half, but letting it continue. There was a gray area that was found rather than, holding firm to, no, you were not going to take this, you're not going to take Tosk. We're going to give him asylum. But he doesn't want asylum. I don't care. I'm going to give it to him, whether he wants it or not, because I know what's better for him, right? That's what he did not do, which would have had a whole different result. So it all really comes down to how we navigate our own ethics and morality with others, and how we work through both of those, finding the gray. Life is gray.
In true Star Trek form, at the end of the episode, like so many other Star Trek episodes before it, you have that satisfying ending where you're like, I think everything worked out for the better. I think they made the right decision, or that's interesting that they did that. I think it worked out, for everybody, involved, kind of thing.